Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next session at Africa Tech Summit Connects, which is Powering Africa's Commercial Revolution, and is a look at the logistics and digital logistics companies that will be powering the commercial growth on the continent as it goes free trade increasingly over the next few years. It's rare you get an opportunity to present a panel in your underpants, so thank you to COVID-19 for that. And thank you very much to my panelists for joining me. They represent three of the most exciting and best funded, I might say, logistics companies from across the continent. Obi from Kobo 360, Jean-Claude from Lorry Systems, and Misha from Jetstream. I'll hand over briefly to them to let them introduce themselves, starting with Obi, if you don't mind.
My name is Obi. Also, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Kobo 360, a digital supply chain platform that was built here and now across 6 countries in Africa. And we're trying to drive efficiency in the supply chain to increase trade and commerce across Africa.
Hey, Tom, you're muted there, but I think you said JC. Hi, everyone. My name is Jean-Claude Domo. I'm co-founder and chief product officer of Lorry Systems. Lorry is the leading e-logistics marketplace for trucking and transportation in frontier markets. The mission of Lorry is to lower the cost of goods in frontier markets. And so trade is one of the best ways to do that, and bringing efficiency to logistics is how we do it with technology. Very excited to be here and to participate in this panel. Thanks.
And last but not least, Misha.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Misa Addie. I'm co-founder and CEO of Jetstream Africa. We are a vertical broker that runs end-to-end shipments of cargo between a business in one country and a business in another country, crossing customs brokers, freight forwarders, warehouses, haulage companies, airlines, and sea freight vessels.
Great, thank you very much. And these are really three of the most exciting companies operating in this space, so we should have some good insights on the development of the sector over the last couple of years and into the future. Speaking of the future, people with crystal balls suggest that Africa will have 1.7 billion consumers by 2030. A growing middle class with bigger spending power than ever before, e-commerce revenues almost doubling by 2024. We are in the grips of a commercial revolution on the continent. What role can digital logistics entities such as yourselves play in encouraging that, well, quicker speed of revolution, if you like? And how crucial are you to the economic growth on the continent? We can start with Misha.
Great. So most businesses in Africa, as you know, make and sell physical things, and you can't sell what you can't move in the physical world. So logistics is really a centerpiece of the entire commerce equation. And we've seen so much positive momentum in the fintech world, and there are a bunch of e-commerce websites that are coming up to allow SMEs and big companies alike to sell products. But it's the people who are actually running the cargo on the ground that are solving one of the trickiest bottlenecks. So I do think logistics companies are key to commerce and key to economic development on the continent.
Obi?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think one of the key exciting things is the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. It will create a $3.4 trillion economic bloc, and also increase trade in our ecosystem by more than 52%. And what I ask myself is, how can startups, right, like ours, be able to plug in to bring this to life? I think the first thing is building capacity, right, and being able to have that reach to be able to really bring all the supply chain, both air, land, and sea together. One of the things we've been working on is what we call GLOS, Global Logistics Operating System. And we've had a few partnership with Afri-Exim Bank, where we are discussing how do we bring the payment infrastructure they are building with the logistics blockchain solution we're building together to form that foundation to be able to really power this economic block. Because behind it is logistics, and logistics is more complex in this our ecosystem, especially when you talk about almost 54 different jurisdictions and the inefficiencies that can come from that. So you see that if the logistic, the digital supply chain platforms like Jetstream, Lorry System, and others don't start innovating, that this good innovation in Africa might not actually come true.
Jean-Claude, where does Lorry fit into encouraging economic growth in Africa?
It's a great question. You know, we set out to build this business, again, based on numbers that you guys all know by now, how logistics impacts the cost of goods on the continent. The thing that people don't talk enough about is how that cost impact impacts the business that Misha was just talking about. So today, for instance, if a farmer in northern Kenya is looking to sell macadamia nuts to Haagen-Dazs, let's say in a factory in the US, and they're competing for that business with, say, farmers in China. Today, the farmer in China is probably going to win that market, because getting those macadamia nuts from his or her market to the factory in the US is going to be much cheaper for them than it would be for this Kenyan farmer. And so the same way that AWS, Amazon Web Services, has powered the sort of technology revolution in the West, allowing countless companies to build their businesses while just using infrastructure as a service. I think what we collectively are trying to do in a very, very big market is lay the foundation for infrastructure for moving goods from A to B, from maker to buyer, from seller to buyer, is as smooth to plug into as AWS. And that starts with technology. So to answer your question, Tom, how is Lorry doing it? We're doing it by having and making available to our customers a technology solution that is built for frontier markets, that is built for markets where there are limitations around access to data. There are limitations around the types of phones you can use. But one that also is versatile enough to adapt to some of the largest traders and movers of cargo, but yet and still, whether they're large or small, giving them the ability to plug into a sort of ready-to-buy infrastructure as a service, allowing them to move their goods more efficiently.
So clearly businesses like yourselves are having a big impact, and there's a big addressable market. When it comes to approaching traditional players within this space, how open are they to using technology to make their businesses more efficient or cost effective? I mean, is it an industry that's resistant to change, or has it been open to new ideas? We could maybe start with Misha.
Okay, I'm just having a little issue with the audio. Would you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what experiences have you had in terms of approaching traditional players within the logistics industry? Are they open to adapting new solutions in order to make their businesses more efficient, or are they sort of a bit resistant to change?
Well, I think especially in cross-border logistics, there's this awareness that there is an evolution toward digitization. So we actually work with a lot of freight forwarders and customs brokers who are interested in digitizing, but they don't know how. And so I think the big push for us is certainly with our engineering platform, but also something that perhaps does not get enough attention, and that's design. So many of the companies that have existed for decades in the logistics industry, especially cross-border, have developed manual systems that work more or less efficiently. And the biggest switching cost for them is to sort of unlearn the habits of the manual processes and get on board with technology. They may conceptually understand that technology is more efficient, but it really requires an organizational change and a change in mindset for them to get all of their teams, all of their ground laborers onto these technology platforms. So from our perspective at Jetstream, we are as keenly focused on the engineering and the architecture of the system as we are in the design and the usability, so that people who are working the warehouses, working the ports, can easily access these technologies and use them readily.
Obi, what are Kobo's experiences of persuading customers to adapt technology?
Yeah, I think that the COVID-19 made it very, very essential and a little bit easier to sell technology to, especially the enterprises, right? Before, most of these enterprises are not very open, right, to changing some of the ways they do things, especially in the things that matter. For example, on the what we call proof of delivery system, right, where you want them to be able to accept that they have received goods with just a code, right? Before, they wanted that code plus the physical paper proof of delivery, but we've seen 42% adoption in the past 4 months on e-waybill system, and I think that is because of COVID that actually made this organization be more open to it. I think that they're also kind of gearing up for some other type of disruption that might happen in future. So that is making this our ecosystem to be taken more seriously. On the driver side, so they're still open. What they loved about it is that this technology that we already have made it easy for them to still be able to increase their earnings and get access to loads during the COVID-19 without needing to call. It was also a channel for dissemination of information during that COVID where people were confused. So that was some of the ways that we saw them using seeing the platform beyond just accepting load. They started looking at it as something that is really critical as they build their own small micro enterprises.
Jean-Claude, is that your experience as well? That it takes like a bit of education, and you need to invest in sort of selling to these companies and educating them, persuading them to get on board.
Yeah, I mean, I think both Misha and Obi have covered, I'd say, the main points here. Absolutely agree with you, Misha, that design is a huge piece here. It's something that we realized very early on that we couldn't simply, and when I say early on, I mean like the year of the founding of Lori. We realized then that simply copying and pasting what Uber Freight had done or what other Western companies were building was not going to be sufficient, because the market is different, frontier markets in general, but the continent especially. We realized that the problems that needed to be solved were slightly different, and the tools that you have to solve them with are also very different. So an example, for instance, in the West, there are very few clerks that play a part in the end-to-end flow of goods. Whereas here on the continent, they are a very critical part of loading, of offloading trucks. So for a solution to really integrate all of the pieces and capture data all across, one must think of a different stakeholder that players like Uber or Convoy don't have to worry about. And so building technology for the continent with product managers, engineers, data scientists that are African or have experience on the continent or are preferably, like for us, based on the continent, has a huge impact. The second thing that we have seen spur adoption is definitely COVID. I have to say we're having this conference online, right? So at every level of the economy, what you've seen is that people have been more open to trying different things, oftentimes technology-enabled different things. to do the jobs that they used to do. And certainly we've seen a lot more inbound inquiries about licensing our technology for operations. And so not only is adoption increased, but its form, meaning the queries being inbound versus sort of us pitching our solution has also increased dramatically.
In quite a lot of sectors of African tech, we have the kind of what are startups doing? Are they disrupting or are they creating a new market? I mean, where do digital logistics companies like yours fit when it comes to more traditional incumbents like DHL, who we mentioned before? Are you disrupting companies like that, or are you sort of providing an alternative? You're working with those companies and adding to the ecosystem. Maybe Obi, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I'm always a big fan of this question. I think that in Africa, there is more to build than to disrupt. I think for us here, there's still a lot of work to be done. So when you even look at DHL is one of our customers, actually, DHL Global Forwarding. So I think you'll see more of a collaboration to create more value. So with that, you kind of see that. Where do you even start, right? There is little to no internet penetration. There is user education issues. There is working capital bottlenecks. There is talent issues, right? Where do you start? So there's nothing we're disrupting here yet, right? So what we're doing is innovating. And I think it's not just in logistics, it's in every sector in actually Africa. I think I know the tech ecosystem loves the word disruption, but I will be very careful in Africa to use that word. I think what we're doing more is innovating and creating things, right? And bringing things together. That's what we're trying to do yet. Of course, the traditional sectors, they're there. I don't think we're disrupting them. And I actually doubt if we should, because remember, in Uber, you can disrupt the drivers and the taxi guys, and they have social security, right? But in our continent, people don't have social security. These people are using that money to train their families, right? I think is kind of the other thing, the empathy that is required from African startups to just go beyond the shareholder value creation, but also to make sure that we're building a sustainable ecosystem.
I'm actually going to go ahead and start rebranding Disrupt Africa to Build Africa or Work Together Africa right after this call is finished. Misa, is that a view you share? Do you think it's a case of there's room for traditional players and for new entrants?
I definitely share that view, and I think technology is the reason why we can build and we can amplify logistics and extend it to people who are underserved. So right now, my aunt is actually a freight forwarder in Ghana, and when I told her about what we were doing at Jetstream, and she advised me, she said, don't bother with these little one container shippers, small businesses that want to do import export, because it's a big hassle to serve them. So you have a market where a lot of the customs brokers and a lot of the freight forwarders are chasing the same limited number of large companies because the economics are nice. When you add technology into the picture, you make it easier for logistics companies to scale. So the work that we do at Jetstream makes it easier for freight forwarders and brokers to get visibility on cargo and to move relatively small amounts of cargo across borders without the hassle and the time investment. That means we're opening up the market to shippers who are mid-sizes, who otherwise would be looked at by some of the brokers like my aunt, who justifiably say, that's not a profitable business for me. So we're making formerly overlooked markets profitable for logistics companies. And that way, I do believe we're building out a new market rather than disrupting the current infrastructure. Great.
Obi's already mentioned previously the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which obviously has entered into force in parts of the continent at least. Jean-Claude, what impact do you see that having on your business, and what opportunities are there that you can take advantage of with this new sort of free trade era coming into effect? Unmute.
So sorry about that. So yeah, this is a massive deal for the continent. It literally would be the world's largest free trade zone since WTO. So we are looking forward to it and participating in unlocking the value there. I think there are really sort of two ways to look at it. According to a number of different reports, one of the huge impact that is expected is in foreign direct investment. And so we are certainly expecting there to be quite a bit of investment in manufacturing and production. So that is, by definition, going to grow volumes quite a bit. But more importantly is really in border crossings. I mean, today, whether it's in at the border between Kenya and Uganda or at the port in Nigeria, the actual logistics of trucks moving is still a huge problem. There are week-long lines at borders and at the entrance of ports. So this trade agreement is very important, but it really needs to be supplemented with the right technology to facilitate the movement of goods and the movement of goods in a safe way that allows all of the participating countries to feel like this is something that they're willing to scale. So I think the first few months, once this resumes in January next year, the first few months are going to be critical. It's going to be critical that companies like ours provide e-logistics solutions for trucks crossing borders, for digital registrations, the equivalent of the easy passes of other countries, to help really promote easier and better crossing of barriers, so that we can really unlock the massive value that this is intended to create.
Great. Obi, Cobra 360, where's that going to fit into this new era of free trade, and what opportunities are you seeing?
Yeah, as mentioned, we're already at the forefront of this. We've been working on a blockchain solution with AfriExim. But most importantly, I'm actually excited on how this will turn Africa into this real economic bloc. Because, at times when we say $154 billion worth of market size for logistics in Africa, can you really access that? That's the problem. Can you access that? Right? And that's also why at times investors are not able to see how credibly we can build bigger companies in Africa, right? Because you need to launch in any countries like a US company going to Europe is the same level of difficulty. But here you're doing that for maybe $5-10 million worth of additional revenue, right? So is that really scalable? So I think that one thing this would do is actually just beyond the e-logistics space. I think it's going to build a one central market that is large, that everybody can be able to see something to do with. I think he's going to create a lot of economic opportunities. There will be more SMEs, right? And that will also kind of help our business, especially when we start looking into the kind of the consolidated or less than food truck load space and the last mile deliveries. These are the things that will build tangible scale there. I think he will also be able to kind of create this interesting dynamism within African governments on working together, right? And that is something that can be underestimated, right? Where countries actually start competing with each other, right? And that internal competition will create a lot of enabling environment that will favor digital revolution happening in our ecosystem.
Not to mention peace, right? Like, not to mention peace, right? One of the things that folks often overlook about peace between two countries is when there is an economic interest to be lost, it is more likely that they will find a middle ground, right? It's the reason why none of us could ever imagine a war between the US and Canada or US and Mexico or whatever it might be, right? And so creating, as Obi mentioned, creating those ties, those economic ties that are much more meaningful, because those tariffs have been brought down is absolutely essential. So yeah, I completely agree with that.
Great. And Misha, how exciting an era are we entering into of a combination of free trade on one hand and e-logistics services providing the rails for that intercontinental continental trade on the other hand? I mean, what opportunities are there for companies like yourselves, but also just for commercial development on the continent in general with the marriage of those two things?
It's very exciting, and I would focus on two areas. The first area is really cross-sector collaboration. So I've long believed that logistics companies are really underutilized partners for the banks and trade finance providers. We see the cargo, we touch the cargo, depending on whether it's a cross-border trade, there's quality checks of the cargo. There are things that we know about the goods that de-risk loans extended in trade finance deals. So the integration that we do vertically is as important sort of deep into the supply chain. So if you look at supply chain as not just being about logistics, also being about finance, about being storage and warehousing, collaboration between all those different players is something that's even more important with the African Continental Free Trade Area, because there's really so little infrastructure that does that already. I would say also that one of the big promising elements of the free trade area is the ability for cargo owners, the people who are our customers, to move up the value chain. So many of them on the export side are shipping out raw commodities, whereas the intra-Africa trade is more likely to be value-added, profitable products. And so the ability for many of these companies to move up that value chain is going to rest a little bit on the logistics companies to become specialists in things like cold chain, perishability, fragile handling. All of those different sort of more sophisticated forms of moving cargo from A to B will help us grow alongside the companies that are moving up the value chain.
Great. So all of these exciting opportunities and development, that's led to a significant increase in funding for the logistics space. According to Disrupt Africa's figures, other data providers are available. The number of startups in the space that raised funding increased by almost 100% in 2019, and the amount of funding raised increased 260% to around $70 million in total. And that is certainly been another increase again this year. What's behind the surge of investment into the space, and what kind of investors are putting money into it, and what opportunities are they seeing? We'll start with Obi, but I'll touch base with you all on that.
Yeah, thank you. I think what is happening is, of course, we see a first wave of fintechs. First wave was the e-commerce, and they did their best, and they were successful to a degree. We saw the second wave of fintech, and you're beginning to see exits, which is actually very promising. I think the kind of what I call the real sector, right, is not really about e-logistics. I think is real tech-enabled platforms, right, that are taking existing established industry with cash flows and different things and just digitizing them, right, and driving efficiency. That is what you're seeing. And I think our time is coming in few years, from next 2 years to next 7 years. You're going to see significant success and exit. And the reason why I think there is even a lot of excitement in the future is because investors are beginning to see companies that have potential to actually go to New York Stock Exchange and sustainably stay there. Why? Who are your customers? Your customers are Unilever, they're Maersk, they're Procter & Gamble. These companies are more than 100 years, right? And when you have real contracts with them, and logistics is one of the most basic things, it means that it's sustainable. It means that it's something that everybody all over the world understands, right? So I think that is part of the reason why you're seeing investors that haven't put money in Africa are beginning to put money in Africa, because this is real. They're also seeing clear path to profitability. That is also another thing, because this sector is very serious and mature. So I think those things are kind of de-risking the African risk that most investors see. They're also seeing higher quality exposed founders right? That's also another thing, right? So, and these founders have also had the opportunity to see what has happened in the first and second revolution with e-commerce and fintech. So I think that those are allowing us to build the right governance, focus on execution, be able to build the right team and right processes that are making investors comfortable. And I think it's those things that actually bring in the money. It's not that specifically any person loves this more, right? And also they see a lot of success in our space already when some of them have invested in China, like in Food Truck Alliance and other places, and they see that those things make money. They also become more open, right? And they're looking for cheap deals. And where is the best place to find cheap deals than Africa?
Jean-Claude Obi just told us he's planning on launching on the New York Stock Exchange. Is that something that's on your agenda? And do you see the same kind of exciting possibilities for the future from a funding perspective?
Hold on, let me just write that down. New York Stock Exchange, you said? Yeah, I mean, listen, that's the goal. Building sustainable companies, getting funded, returning capital to investors, and then investing in the next generation, and on we go, right? Like, so that's the goal. To get there, we have to build sustainable, value-creating businesses. And I recently wrote a piece on this because it's, as much as the past 2 years, 2019 and 2020, have brought a lot of promise and of confirmation to our markets, with over $2 billion of investment in 2019, and just last week, Paystacks acquisition by Stripe. You know, it definitely feels like, for a lot of those that sort of took a chance a few years back and were starting to sweat it out a little bit, it looks more and more like, yeah, this was the right bet. This makes as much sense as I thought it did, 4 or 5 years ago. But it's not promised. It's not promised, man. The list is long of BRIC countries that have shown promise for 2 consecutive years and then crashed and burned. Hell, it's happened with us. It's happened with the continent as well, right? Like, I remember the early days of Iroko, right? When so many of us were like thinking the future was super bright, and then it was a rockier road. Go ask Brazilians how they feel about their boom of 2011. Go to Turkey and see how they feel. South Africa, and so many more. So, not to be a pessimist here, I'm here, right? Left a cushy job at Google to relocate to the continent to do this, because I believe in it wholeheartly, and I think all of us do. And we're in it for the long haul. We're in it to build value and to prove that the continent can do it with the best of them. But we have to avoid the pitfalls of growth at all costs, cutting corners, going just for valuation, just a number of different things that, the markets always end up correcting themselves. The bubbles always end up bursting. So if we apply ourselves and we focus on the right things, I think we can be successful.
Misha, as far as I'm aware, you're in the process of raising funding. I mean, has it got easier over the last couple of years when it comes to talking to investors about putting money into a digital logistics platform?
Yeah, I think there's greater awareness, especially of the scalability of logistics. So we used to get a lot of questions about, well, we got our start in Ghana. Are you a Ghanaian business? And we really see ourselves as a global business. And almost right out of the gate, we were running shipments between South Africa and Ghana, Nigeria and Ghana. And so I think that the gentlemen who are on the conference call right now have helped demonstrate that logistics can be a global business, especially if technology is applied to scale across borders. And I think that's been a big change in how investors see these businesses and how they're sort of assessing the potential for
Fantastic.
return on
a couple
investment.
of you just mentioned scale there. I mean, how important is scale for a logistics startup such as yourself? So it's not can you be successful just as a Kenya-based company, or is the do you need to go Pan-African, especially as you're venture funded? Jean-Claude?
Sorry, I wasn't muted, but I mean, scale is essential to logistics, and it's not because of the E in front of the logistics for the three companies here. In logistics in general, scale matters because that's how you reduce costs. That's how you actually are able to apply what efficiencies technology bring and really sort of prove that the model is effective, that the model works. So scale is very important. The good thing is that there's plenty of market. There's plenty of business to be done. I think Kobo 360 and Lori have been operating in Nigeria for a very long time, and you still go to some of the largest companies that we work with there, like Flour Mills in Nigeria or Dangote or whomever, and we're still a drop in the bucket of the volumes that they're moving. Right, there's plenty of room to grow, and that's important. Growth is very, very important. Growth is absolutely critical. It just has to be done the right way.
Sort of leads into my final questions. Obi, is the sector big enough for various players in this sector? So yeah, Lori have come to Nigeria, Kobo's gone to Kenya. There's a lot of logistics companies that are planning on scaling across the continent. How big is the pie? Is there enough to go around for 3, 4, 5 successful startups in this space?
Yeah, so the good thing is the market is very sizable. So it's a $150 billion market. So that can build a lot of unicorns. The challenge we have today is that the digital platform only have less than 1.4% of that ecosystem, just touching less than 1.4. So we haven't really gotten to that point where we can be able to know whether there is need for consolidation or not. But part of the thing, my philosophy is always that Africa is too fragmented on every front. And we need to start changing that culture because it makes things very difficult. We need to start coming together to build stuff together. So for me, I think that there needs to be a consolidation in the medium to or short to medium term, so that we can be able to channel all our energy into moving that needle from 1.4 to potentially 40. And if we move it to 40, that can build a massive company that will actually everybody will be proud of. It will make money. It will solve the actual problems that we set out to solve, and they can be able to also build all the enabling products to actually help that supply chain to grow, which are, for example, the financial services, right? Solution that we're working on, the InsurTech, the warehousing solution. So all these things are critical. The cold chain, there's a lot of things. Last mile. How can even e-commerce grow if we haven't even touched that? E-commerce cannot build their own infrastructure. They need a real logistics platform to do that, right? So I think just kind of running away from the same Africa disease of over-fragmentation, right? I think that the players need to, in future, at the right time, come together and do something that Africa is not used to doing, which is working together.
Okay, fantastic. So we've come a long way, but we've still got a long way to go. There's a bright future for logistics companies on the continent. I'm being told we have to wrap up. Sorry, I haven't got to any of the audience questions, but I think you should be able to grab all of these wonderful panelists somehow through the platform over the course of the rest of the event if you have any specific questions. Thank you very much, Misha, Obi, and Jean-Claude. All the best for the future. Keep doing what you're doing, and we'll be following you every step of the way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.